Next up, we have Ellen Jo Ljung. She spent nearly I'm going to start over. You've spent nearly 4 decades as an accomplished teacher of middle and high school students in 3 different states, and during that long career, she made many valuable contributions to the teaching profession. Now retired from teaching, Ellen hasn't slowed down too much, maybe a little bit recently, but in addition to her writing, she and her husband of 54 years create art glass that is sold in galleries, and they have, up to this point, traveled the world by kayak on 5 different continents. She also volunteers as a court-appointed special advocate / guardian in foster care and as a political activist. And I'm not even retired, and she's already wearing me out just thinking about this. In her spare time, and she comments here, isn't sleep overrated? She creates wearable art. Her latest novel, Caught in the Crossfire, is about a teacher chafing under micromanagement in Texas. You can read her blog at iamwriter.com and reach her at iamwriter@iamwriter.com. So please welcome her to the stage.
So, oops. I am short. Thank you for having me back. And this is a real diversion for me. Until now, all of my writing has been nonfiction. I wrote 2 textbooks about teaching writing, my teaching memoir, professional development materials. But as I was working on my blog and researching what was going on in states like Texas and California and the way teachers' hands are tied, I became ever more frustrated. And then this woman started talking to me in the shower, when I was sleeping, saying, "Tell my story." And that's how Caught in the Crossfire was born. So this is the first of what you can imagine will be many confrontations with leaders at the school she ends up at in Texas. October 10th, 2022. Claire stared at the bubblegum pink memo the principal's secretary had left on her formica-topped office desk. Be in my office at 3 p.m. sharp. While you were out, indeed. She'd just returned to the department office from teaching her 4th class of the day and had planned to put her feet up while she graded last week's essays. Instead, she wondered what her principal wanted. Claire longed to return to Connecticut, where she'd been a well-respected high school teacher. There she looked forward to talking with her supportive principal and department chair, arguing curriculum with colleagues, and trying out new student-centered lessons. But Connecticut was the past, and the Texas town of Liberty rocked nothing like Connecticut. The present was more complicated, less welcoming. Claire had never wanted to move to the Lone Star State, but she couldn't argue with her husband's insistence that academic positions in philosophy were few and far between, making his opportunity in Austin irresistible. At least Claire still got to teach U.S. history to juniors and AP U.S. history to seniors. She'd always loved challenging students to see patterns and to learn from them. She'd spent hours finding primary sources to supplement the textbooks that had proven inadequate and biased in their coverage of minority groups. And the school in Texas seemed happy to hire her. She put aside her concerns and got to work. After her last class, Claire headed to her command performance. Today, Mrs. Moore, the usually friendly principal's secretary, wouldn't look at Claire when she walked into the anteroom. "He's waiting," Mrs. Moore muttered. When Claire entered the principal's inner sanctum, a carpeted and paneled office, she admired his substantial dark walnut desk, the grain a swirling tapestry of deep browns and blacks, its surface covered with neatly organized piles. It seemed as imposing as its occupant. Mr. Mitchell continued to focus on some paperwork and ignored her, leaving her standing and unsure before finally saying, "Sit down, Mrs. Peters." Claire winced. How long would it take for him to call her Ms. Peters? Or was that another price she had to pay for moving to this state? She waited, fidgeting in the hard wooden chair by his desk. "Mrs. Peters," he repeated, "I assume you know why you're here." "I don't, Mr. Mitchell. Is there a problem?" Do you have any idea how many phone calls I fielded about your inappropriate conversations with students? I beg your pardon? Mystified, Claire couldn't imagine who would call him or what they'd call about. Isn't it true that you talked with your students about the shooting of that young man in San Antonio last week? Well, I responded when a student brought it up. Parents are complaining that you stood up for the young man. He cut her off, his voice sharp. Is it true that you asked them if they thought the officer had been wrong to shoot? That young men of color are more apt to be shot? Mr. Mitchell, I couldn't let Liam continue to mock the young man. He was just sitting in his car when the officer shot him. Surely the stats speak for themselves. They do not, Mrs. Peters. The principal's intense glare made Claire squirm. Our students had nothing to do with this incident, and our parents don't want their children to be made to feel bad. But am I supposed to ignore comments and questions? Systemic racism is a problem with police, and that's enough, Mrs. Peters. You've overstepped. You need to stick to the curriculum, leave the parenting to parents. That will be all. With that, Principal Mitchell turned back to his desk, clearly expecting her to leave. Claire waited until she was clear of the office to exhale a deep sigh. She'd known Texas would be different, but she'd never anticipated this lack of trust or the micromanagement. She missed the academic freedom she'd had in Connecticut. Claire straggled to her car, wishing she could expect more support from her husband when she told him about this encounter. But she was pretty sure of what Cal would say. He'd tell her to just give it time, stick to the curriculum, avoid controversy. He'd tell her not to rock the boat. Easy for him to say. How could she teach her students to be critical thinkers and thoughtful students of history if she remained hamstrung like this? The drive home felt too long, and yet not long enough, as Claire struggled to find emotional equilibrium. Tomorrow would have to be another day. Claire parked her Prius in the two-car garage and entered the kitchen through the back door. Today, its cheery yellow walls and white cabinets with brass hardware failed to lift her spirits. Her 9-year-old son, Henry, sat at the kitchen table, apparently tackling his homework. How was your day, kiddo? Distracted, checking her texts. She didn't look up as she spoke. Henry didn't look up either. Fine. That's it? I've got a lot of homework, Mom, he muttered. Claire ruffled his long sandy hair and smoothed his cowlick. Though Henry usually loved to chat after school, Claire let it go, still mulling over her meeting with Mr. Mitchell. She went to start dinner, but her day was catching up with her. Instead, she texted Cal. It's your turn to pick up Jack from football practice today. I'm placing an order with La Playa, so please pick it up. Got it. Everything okay, babe? Cal replied. We can talk when I see you. Claire went up to their room and changed into jeans and her favorite Michelle Obama t-shirt. It failed to comfort her. Sighing, she returned to the kitchen, sitting with Henry and grading essays, but her mind wandered. Should she have played it safe and ignored Liam's comments? She tried to replay the incident in her mind. What had Liam said? He'd walked into class just before the bell and, smirking, asked his buddies if they'd heard about another black kid getting shot. Claire remembered asking if he meant Eric Cantu, the 17-year-old shot a week earlier who was currently on life support. Yeah, Liam said. But what did he expect? You know, he tried to evade police the night before, right? Claire had asked if Liam knew that Eric was shot when he was eating a hamburger in a car with his friend. But Liam argued that Eric had tried to drive away. Why might he have done that, Liam? She asked. Liam didn't answer. Do you suppose, as a young man of color, he didn't feel safe in this situation? Why should that matter, Liam's buddy Josh asked. It's his fault for trying to leave. At this point, other students had joined the conversation, so Claire felt responsible for its direction. Do you know the statistics for police shootings of young men of color compared to their white counterparts? She asked. Some grumbled, others shook their heads. That's worth checking out. Sometimes things aren't as simple as they seem. Now let's get to our work for today. Thinking back, Claire felt confident that the conversation had gone that way. She hadn't been looking for trouble, but she couldn't bring herself to pass up a teachable moment. Had she let it go too far? She'd brought them back to the text quickly. At least she hadn't spoken back to Mitchell. Surely this too would pass? Claire returned to her papers. She and Henry were hard at work when Cal and Jack got home. "Mom," Jack exclaimed, "Coach said I did great in practice and he's going to give me playing time on Saturday." Claire wished she'd adapted to Texas as well as her son. "That's great, Jack." Claire tried to summon up enthusiasm. Like Henry, Jack had blue eyes, but his brown hair stayed tidy and he swaggered when he walked. "You and Dad'll be there, right?" "Of course, hon. Go wash up. Thanks for picking up the food, Cal." "No worries. Everything okay?" "Let's talk later." "The kids are hungry. Henry, please clear the table so we can eat." During dinner, Jack talked nonstop about his new friends, his cool math teacher, and his coach's encouragement, while Henry and Claire remained quiet, nodding at the right moments, but barely speaking. Cal spoke up. "My turn. I have exciting news too." Claire looked up. Cal's face glowed as he spoke. "The Course of Study Committee approved my graduate course in moral philosophy today. I still have some fine-tuning to do on the normative ethics section, but the rest of my outline got full approval for the semester. I'm so psyched." "What's moral philosophy, Dad? What are normative ethics?" asked Jack. Henry continued to look down at his plate. "That's normative, Jack. Moral philosophy is the study of what is right and what is wrong. We'll look at the big questions of right and wrong, called meta-ethics, as well as applied ethics, which helps us tackle specific moral challenges that people face. Normative ethics determines how basic moral standards are arrived at and justified." Cal slid into his professor role seamlessly. "I'm proud of you, Cal," Claire managed to utter, even as she felt a bit betrayed. Her husband and older son seemed right at home in this very foreign environment, while she felt lost, distracted. She didn't notice that Henry still hadn't looked up or spoken. Sensing her mood, Cal offered to wrangle the boys and clean up, and Claire headed upstairs. 20 minutes later, he joined her. "What's up, Claire Bear? You don't seem happy." "Oh, Cal, Mitchell called me in today and bawled me out." "Why? What could he have complained about?" Claire retold the story of the exchange with Liam and the subsequent parent phone calls. "He said I should leave parenting to the parents, that they don't want their children to be made to feel bad when they weren't even part of it." She sighed. "Sweetheart, don't you want our parenting of our sons to be up to us?" "I'm not parenting them." Claire's shoulders stiffened, her fists clenched, her mouth a taut line. "But Cal, these kids have such entitlement. They wear blinders. I'm supposed to teach them. Isn't this about right and wrong?" "Maybe," he spoke gently. "You need to remember that we're not in Connecticut anymore. Sure, it's different here. Maybe the rules of the game are less open, but these kids can learn from you if you can figure out how to make it work. Isn't their learning what matters?" Come on, Cal, this was about their learning. It's not just what's in the textbook, especially since the textbook doesn't even tackle tough issues. You know that more than anybody, Mr. Moral Philosopher. I know you're upset, Claire, and I get that you miss Connecticut, but we're here now, and you need to adapt. Look at Jack. He was a great soccer player, and yet he's taken to football now. Claire glared at him. Claire, sweetie. Cal reached for her. I'm worn out. Congrats on your good news, Calvin. Wish I had some of my own. I'm going to bed.